This is the Post Shift Podcast, a raw look at the hospitality industry.
So let's get started. Let's introduce yourself. How are you? What's your title?
Yeah, my name is Trevor Kallies. I'm the beverage director for the Donnelly Group. Donnelly Group is a group of pubs, cocktail bars, barbershops, coffee shops. Enter the cannabis realm now.
Really?
Yeah. I don't do a whole lot with the cannabis. Actually, zero so far, which personally I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I don't really touch the barbershops outside of the ones that are attached to our cocktail bars. And then the pubs is pretty much where I spend all of my time.
And have you ever calculated how many seats in total you have? Because you have 18 venues.
Seats? Ooh, no, I've never done seats. I would say, oh man, I wouldn't even know where to start. I think we're over probably close to touching 2,000 seats total.
Oh, son of a bitch. I don't know why that switched off, which is okay. Because it didn't push record. Which is fine, it'll work itself out. So how many seats total?
I think we're probably close to 2,000 all in. Maybe a little bit more. Well, I mean, when you factor in Walrus, which is our Toronto venue down on Bay.
Oh, and that's like 250.
That's close to 1,000 itself. If you factor
1,000 seats?
If we're full bore, it's like, I think it's just over 900. Because we've got 479 on the main floor, add another 150, 180 on the patio, downstairs another 150. Then you got the Lovejoy coffee shop mixed in there, which another 18. Like, it just grows and grows.
I think last time, you just opened Walrus last time I was here.
Yeah.
I didn't think you had the patio in when I was here. It was still... Is it just out the front and around the corner?
It's on the north side of the building.
Okay.
Right in that little courtyard below the CIBC building.
Wow. So when did you start bartending?
2000.
Age yourself, give yourself a year.
The year 2000, I was 20. We're going through an English Lit degree at UBC.
Yeah.
Started working at Earl's, the chain restaurant. It's now it was basically in Canada, the US, and now it's like all over the place. Everywhere. Was day bartender there, splitting like my time between going to university and basically just like doing the Earl's thing, which is like making bellinis, pouring slushy margaritas, making a whole bunch of cocktails that were like legitimately only Earl's cocktails.
Yeah.
There was no outside the box thinking.
I always try to put time in perspective for people. Like 2000, like we're talking pre-internet-ish. Mm-hmm. Like we're talking before Facebook, before all these things that now the algorithm influences in the bartender world. When you had to learn something, you literally had to go to the library and fucking find a book about costing, about that sort of thing. And it was not as it is today.
Well, 2000 was even before I cared. So, it's true, though. I spent the first 7 years of my bartending career trying to figure out what I was going to do when I was done bartending. It was a different world back then, but when we needed to know something, we were pulling out the Mr. Boston or the New York Bartender's Guide and, like, stumbling through how to make a Manhattan.
Yeah.
This is an era where we had a bottle of Angostura bitters last us 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do with that little bottle?
You know what I used to Angostura bitters for? Cleaning my blenders.
Right.
Hot water, a couple of dashes of Angostura, give it a blend. Freaking cleans them perfectly.
I remember my original bar manager and I were really, really close friends. We were friends well before we started working together, and we were trying to trim down inventory because at Earl's that's what you do.
Yeah.
You reduce bottles. we had to count it every week. So let's get rid of this bottle. And we came across Campari, and every bar has got a bottle of Campari. The year is 2003. What do you do with it? We're like, well, I don't know. We should probably taste it and find out. I was like, well, that's gross. So we just ended up doing shots of Campari. To get rid of it.
2003, shots of Campari. You were doing it before it was cool.
But not in a way that we thought was cool. We were literally just trying to purge that bottle. And Pim's, same thing, kind of uncovered that little gem. And we were making like Cosmos and apple martinis and raspberry martinis. And like every cocktail wasn't called a cocktail at Earl's. It was a martini. They had a martini menu, right?
And then the cocktail menu was like the mojitos and the...
Everything was martini at that time. Literally everything was served in that V-shaped glass. Vodka plus fruit plus liqueur shaken equals martini.
Martini.
Right.
So where'd you go from after, like, you finished your degree?
Yeah, I finished the degree. This was the whole thing, right? I finished out my English degree not because I wanted to continue down that road, but by the time I realized I didn't want to be an English teacher, I was already 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through the degree.
May as well finish it.
Exactly. Rather than drop out and do nothing, I wanted to, at least finish that, get that piece of paper, having a university degree will help eventually, depending on that was my mentality back then. So plus all that money was already invested. So finished the degree, kept working at Earl's, was doing a ton of stuff for them. Like I was doing numbers, costing.
Wow.
And that's the thing that Earl's does really well is they teach the numbers very, very well.
I learned most of it at Moxie's.
Yeah, and same thing, right? You get these corporate chains, and as much as their ethos or their mentality doesn't really vibe as you go along, they do costing extremely well. So I got to the point where I was just a really good numbers guy, right? Always been okay at math, learned how to use Excel really well. Ordering was just ordering and receiving. That was inventory was my thing. I really enjoyed it. And then, so they had me doing costing for all the other places. Yeah. So we had regions set up at Earl's. So I was basically going around and helping other bar managers learn why their inventory was too big.
Wow.
Or why why they weren't hitting their target liquor cost or their.
What year was this? 2005.
This would have been 04, 05.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they had a wicked program. It was called Point Financials, I think, where they had the whole number set figured out. So they would calculate all your variance. It would give you a theoretical. Wow. Then you just you put in your invoices, you put in your purchases, and then you put in your sales, and it would calculate the actual, and then chasing the number, right? Yeah. I loved it. It was great. But they had me updating prices in Point Financials and going around.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was super young, but this is all I was doing a full-time bar job as well. So,
but really, even that era, we're only talking about metrics started around that time. Inventory, I feel anyway, inventory in most bars only really started getting serious in that mid-2000s.
Yeah, I mean,
outside the corporate chains.
I wasn't around before that, so I couldn't speak to it. But I do know, when I left Earl's, it wasn't for anything. I left Earl's essentially because I felt a little bit stifled. I wasn't learning anything. There was no one teaching me anything. I was probably the best I was ever going to be with that company. I don't think I was GM ready back then. And honestly, I don't think that they were going to send me down that road, which no fault to them. I was 24, 25 years old. Probably wouldn't give me a GM job either. So I took a sidestep and I went to Donnelly Group. A couple of my buddies had already left the Earl's chain and gone to work for this guy named Jeff Donnelly, who had 3 bars in Vancouver at the time. So it wasn't even Donnelly Group. I think it was called Donnelly Hospitality Management back then. But 2 of my buddies had already switched over, started working in the Sparkle Granville Room. It was a hot bar. It was on Granville Street, the nightclub district, but it was this little tiny 88-seat cocktail bar in the middle of just mayhem. Essentially, this is when the Roxy was prime time. Caprice nightclub had just opened. Venue I think was called Plaza Club. Tonic, all these and we were just this little cocktail bar that was really doing some cool stuff. It was when I actually figured out that there was more to a cocktail than just fruit plus juice plus liqueur. So I started working day bar there, actually. So,
at Granville?
Yeah, that was the only job they had. So I basically quit Earl's and then worked my last inventory shift, trained the guy up to learn how to do all the numbers and all the inventory and ordering and whatnot. And my last shift at Earl's was on Monday. My first shift at Granville was a Tuesday. Wow. And for a year, I did 12 p.m. to 6:30 p.m., 5 days a week. Wow. Tuesday to Saturday. It was, I can't even fathom that schedule in my late 30s. Can you imagine only working noon to 6:30?
All the other stuff you could get done. Yeah. That's the way I would look at it now. Looking back, I'm what am I going to do after 6:30? I'm sure I'm going to go out for drinks.
No, I didn't get into that. I didn't get there. I was done, and I went home. And then I maybe would go out for dinner. Work. You want to talk about work-life balance? Yeah. Work noon to 6:30. I didn't turn into the weekend warrior though. It was great. I picked up a second job. I was doing some nightclub bartending for a minute, just for some extra cash. You're not making a ton of money working noon to 6:30, but I was able to save a lot of cash. And day bar on Granville Street, you're 50-50, right? It was basically my life was even Steven. There would be days where I literally paid $8 to work because I had lunch. Yeah. That was pretty much where we were at. But the neat thing about working at a place at Granville Room at the time was we had an actual cocktail menu, and it was split up between. It was super interesting because martini guy, I knew a little bit about flavor profile and whatnot, but they had these 3 different sections in their menu was house cocktails, New York cocktails, and London cocktails.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I was well, what I didn't really understand why each one of them was set up. And the house cocktails I totally got.
Yeah.
Right? And then we were doing some, things like flirtations, like still kind of in that realm of like the fruity martini and whatnot. But they were serving New York cocktails where it was like cocktails created by New York bartenders.
Wow.
Which I was like, which threw me for a bit of a loop. I'm like, there's bartenders in New York. But like things like the 209 East, which is like a long forgotten Dale DeGroff cocktail. And
what's in it?
It was tequila, strawberry. I'm pretty sure it was blue, like bluey purple.
Yeah.
Like, but I mean, these are like I could probably dig up the menu, but that was one that I remembered. And then they had London cocktails and then classics. Mm-hmm. So basically, cocktails that came from great bars in London because Jeff loved to travel. So he was spending a ton of time in London, a ton of time in LA, a ton of time in New York. So he was like bringing these ideas back and making them go. And we had a pretty young, fun bar team in there. I mean, granted, it was Granville Street, so there was a ton of vodka sodas, don't get me wrong. But like actually learning a Negroni or a fancy gin cocktail or a gin daisy.
How shocked were you when you finally learned a Negroni? You're like, oh, that's what Campari is for.
That's what Campari is for. It was, but learning like things like the French 75 and the Pim's Cup, like all of these ingredients that I've been looking at for the last 5 years, and I had no idea what to do with them because that's not the Earl's profile. That's not their drink style back then. It was an eye-opener for sure.
And again, like we'll put it into context, like you couldn't just Google what is Campari.
No.
And have a whole bunch of
Google,
information.
I think Google was like, 2007?
Yeah. So like I always love when the youngsters are like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, you have a supercomputer in your pocket, dude. Yeah. Fucking Google it.
Exactly, Google.
Like I remember, I still have.
Hey Siri, what is Campari?
I still have the episode, the issue of Australian Bartender that had like a 5-page dissertation almost on how to cost out cocktails, and that's how like Australian Magazine did a massive thing about it. I think it was Shawn from Bar Metrics and Jason Gillisich that read it, and like I remember them putting in all the formulas. And we highlight. I remember reading it on the train, going, "Okay, now I know how to do this. I'll put it in Excel."
So this was my first interaction with Bev & Co. as well. So Bev & Co. I think came in 2006 to the Donnelly Group, and we still use them actually up to today. Wow. For a third-party inventory system, but they like you want to talk about costing and inventory control and variance. Like those guys are like the liquor police essentially. Yeah. Like not the bad liquor police that we all hate. But yeah, no, it was like learning how to do costing. I already knew how to do it all, so it was kind of like, like let them do the heavy lifting, and then I can chase it all down. Yeah. But that wasn't my job at the time. I was like day bar. Yeah. Day bar went to night bar. Night bar went to bar manager. Bar manager went to GM, and I bartended / managed at Granville Room for another 5 years. Wow. So basically, 5 years at Earl's, 5 years at Granville Room before I moved into the role that I am now, which is beverage director.
Wow. So what year did you become beverage director?
2010.
So it's been some time now.
Just after the Olympics. So I worked another 2 months after the Olympics, and then had a meeting at Cinema, which was our about to open right before the Olympics. We didn't get it open in time, and the guys decided that I was already doing some cocktail development, like a menu placement and whatnot. But they decided that rather than, because we had more venues and we had been growing, they wanted somebody to actually go and spend time actually promoting a drink program, which they'd always been passionate about, but they'd always been using consultants. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, various people, like Casey Mackay, who he was there before me, so he was doing some cocktail stuff. Ian McRae, who is now, I think, works for Browns as one of their designers. But Jay Jones, who I'm sure most people are familiar with that name, he came over and did a couple cocktail menus for us, and that's kind of that was kind of the turning point in my career where I listened to Jay talk about cocktails, and his candor, his the way he paces himself when he has a presentation and cocktails and conversations, really that was the trigger, right? And that was, I think, 06, 07 is when he came over and did that first menu. He was the guy who really just threw a huge wrench in the cog of Granville Street, because he was talking about fresh muddled pineapple, and we're going to do everything like strawberry, but strawberries are muddled. They're not turned into a syrup or a puree. And we're like, yo, man, that's not going to work. I was that standoff bartender, no, you can't expect us to do this on Granville Street. And it wasn't just the clientele, it was the fact that we were just so busy. Yeah. How are you going to make a muddled pineapple drink with a pineapple wedge garnish that's dipped in black pepper and mounted on the side of the glass? Dude, not a thing. But no, he figured it out. That first cocktail menu was a game changer for me and game changer for Granville Room as well.
So in 2010, you take over as beverage manager, or beverage director. How many pubs were at then?
At the time, we had 8, and then a couple nightclubs that I was dealing with as well. The nightclubs were dramatically different, but we had 8 venues, and then planning for another 2 more in the same year that I took over.
Wow. Yeah. So how many venues have you opened now? Because I know there's some have opened and closed.
Open, closed, bought, sold. Yeah. We have 18 in total, split across Toronto and Vancouver. So Toronto's got 4 spots, Vancouver's got 14 that I deal directly with, and then there's a couple partner venues as well.
Okay. So how many have you opened personally, like as the director?
Oh, bar openings, probably 10 or 11 in terms of like actual like getting like doing the work.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's intense.
I mean, you're asking me numbers that I just like I try to forget all.
Venues open, it's running. Just
and move on to the next. And there's years where we don't open anything, and then there's years where we open like 4 bars. Like if we've got 1 that's in the works right now, and if we actually get it up and running, that'll be 3 in 2019. Yeah, which is wild to me.
Tell me about it. I'm doing 3 in Singapore in 4 months.
Right.
And just because that's the same thing as like you start working on leases or spaces or deals, but then all of a sudden it's like everything falls in at the exact same time. You're like, oh crap, now I've got 3 venues open when it should have been 3 venues over 12 months, but everything, the stars aligned horribly.
While you're also trying to have a life.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the biggest thing is like you could, like a bar open can absorb your entire day. Like you want to talk about like managing minutes, a bar, like opening a bar, everything that can go wrong will go wrong, right? The draft system will fail. The CO2 will basically like stop running. The construction team will leave, but leave you with a massive mess. Yeah. I mean, and most of the times we're still like painting the walls when it's unlocking the door for the first guest to come in.
Are you that hands-on with those sort of things?
I mean, we all are, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's which is something I appreciate. I don't really want a contracting team to come in and build the whole thing and then just leave us with a bar. It's like we're pretty much everybody at head office level is involved in one way or another with the open. Like, and you'll see the owners pushing a broom to get cleaned up and like.
When it comes to like the openings and stuff, do you have a team for the beverage stuff, or is it really you sort of tearing down like?
It's 50-50 whether or not I'm going to have some. It depends on where it is, first of all. If we're opening a place in Toronto, I've got a bunch of like awesome kids out here that are working with me now, and they're super eager, super excited. And Toronto's just a completely different city. Like, I mean, it's like, what is it, quadruple the population that I'm used to in Vancouver. So it's a good market for people. But I got some good dudes out here that are doing some great work. So it's easy to like, hey, how do you feel about this cocktail like program that we're going to launch? And then you work with the head bartender or the bar manager to kind of tweak it so it makes sense for them, and then it makes sense for what their interests are. Yeah. So collaboration is absolutely key. Back in Vancouver, typically I will again start it by myself, and then depending on who the team is that's going to open and be the opening team, it'll either be all me and then work with them after we get open, or it's 50-50. We just opened Ballyhoo in June, or late June, right before Tales of the Cocktail. Yeah. And I had Cam Brown there, so it was very much 50-50. Like, hey, like, what are you working on? What are you excited about?
Oh, he told me it was all him.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. I mean, I thought I was being generous in 50-50. But if he wants to claim it's all him, great. He can.
You do have some loyal kids that would like basically bend over backwards for you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just I love like everybody that works for me. It's great. Yeah. They're awesome people, and the bar world is so transient. Like, there's always a new opening, a new hotspot. Like, a lot of guys like love to run around and chase that money. Yeah. But I mean, it's pretty cool to develop relationships that last longer than 6 months of the bar open honeymoon.
So you opened up Ballyhoo, and then went straight. Did you do Tales this year? As a cap?
Yeah. Basically, while we were trying to open Ballyhoo, I was also trying to plan and prep and get organized for Tales of the Cocktail. So it was basically sitting in a construction site all day, and then when the construction team was done, it was like laptop open, calculating recipes, coming up with the liquor order for Tales.
I'm curious because I asked James Grant the same thing yesterday, because I know he wants to be a cap next year and he's being the Trash Panda this year. It's like, you're super accomplished. Like, you have a massive job with a massive amount of workload. What draws you to things like cap program at Tales? Like, I know you've been doing it for a really long time.
Probably.
But every year you go back.
Well, I mean, the way that I do Tales is quite a bit different than most people do Tales. I went down to Tales of the Cocktail in 2009 as a consumer. That was my first experience with Tales of the Cocktail, not knowing really anything about it. I found it in the back of an Imbibe magazine. Literally saw the ad. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, what's this? And it happened to fall literally on my birthday.
Oh, nice.
So I managed to persuade Meg to. It was her birthday is the day after my birthday. So I managed to persuade her. I don't know how. I probably could never get this accomplished ever again. But I persuaded her to spend our birthdays in New Orleans at a cocktail conference.
Okay.
So we went down, had an amazing time. Found the William Grant welcome party at Hendrix, and watched a burlesque show. And then all of a sudden, I'm in a bourbon seminar with some of the distillers that I've only ever heard about or read about. Huge eye opener. But I did see the caps running around, doing all this heavy lifting, and my thought process while I was sitting there watching these guys do all the work is well, that looks like fun, but I imagine you have to be an American or probably live in New Orleans or be somebody who knows somebody.
Yeah.
And I'm just, a shithead bartender from Vancouver. I'll never be able to do that. But then Tales came to Vancouver for their first on tour. And that's when I applied to be part of the CAP program, not knowing a whole lot about it outside of the fact that they do all the work. Mm-hmm. And that was basically what the application said. It's you be a CAP, you do a lot of work, you work long hours, and you cut limes, and you juice lemons, and all that good stuff. But that's the part of the job that I've always really liked, is the heavy lifting that goes into before the drink. Yeah. I love doing prep, I love doing organizational stuff, I love coming up with PARs and stuff like that. So, but also meeting guys like John Darragon, Don Lee, Mike Ryan, the whole crew of CAPs that came before me was really humbling, because these guys are the guys that are opening team at PVT. Yeah. Okay, I'm now working with you. Perfect. So I got hooked on it. I got hooked on the actual CAP lifestyle. It was a fun party, but then you work really hard, and then it's a really fun party, and then you work harder again. So I did on tour, went and then got invited to go to New Orleans and do the big show. Oh, wow. Which is dramatically different than an on tour. Came back to Vancouver, did on tour again, back to New Orleans, and then it was New Orleans. But slowly and steadily, they within the work that I was doing back home and with the Donnelly group, and then the stuff that I was learning down there, they groomed me or developed me or mentored me, whatever word you want to use, to actually take over and start managing that program. Oh, wow. So in 2014, they put me into the black coat position, which is basically middle management. Yep. And then from there, the following year was the white coat, which is upper management. And then this year was the first year that none of the guys that had been before me were actually functional at Tales this year. Wow. Well, they were doing their own thing. They're all presenters and everything else. But it was I love going back there because now I'm in the position where it's still hard work. Yep. I'm not the one juicing unless it's an emergency, and then I'm all systems go. Yeah. But it's doing the prep work and then being able to read all those applications that all these people from all over the world are sending in. So I go back for that, the people side of it. Yeah. And obviously the work is great too, but meeting 60 new people every single year and developing friendships and relationships. We had CAPs from South Korea, Ghana, Kenya, meeting these people and seeing how they work and bringing all those new views. That's why I like to go back and do it. I mean, I'm sure there's got to be an end game for that. Now I'm kind of thinking, well, how do I get somebody to come in and backfill all the things that I do? So that's the next year and a half to 2 years. Is all right, well, who's next in line? Because it's been 10 years.
Is there a plan? What's the end game for your position at Donnelly Group? What's?
Again, I don't know. I mean, we spent a lot of time looking for people to kind of move into a regional role or move into an assistant or anything like that. The right person's going to rise up, and me starting as day bar back in 2005, and then day bar, night bar, bar managing, that hierarchy, that ladder. I mean, that's what I'm looking for, is someone to come in and then get inspired and then stick around and kind of go that ladder. I don't think it'll take them 6 years to get to the point, but I love the idea of growth within an organization and hiring from zero and then training up and then getting those people to inspire. But unfortunately, the bar world just doesn't always work like that. No, because people want to climb up and they want to run their own program and they want to go and manage their own venue. And there's so many bar owners out there. And
so much money in the system, and
not enough good people. Yeah. So end game for me. I mean, I'm happy. I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. The guys that I work for afford me so much time and opportunity. My schedule is my schedule. I don't get micromanaged, which is great. Awesome. but I do the work.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like I create my own deadlines and then I meet them.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's like they would be so happy if I did a quarterly cocktail list.
Yeah.
And just like did it all, but it's like, maybe we don't need a quarterly. Maybe we need biannually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, moving forward, I think they're still poised for more growth. You know, 14's a lot of venues for one person to kind of oversee, and you know, we already talked about how great it is to have good people working at those places, and I think every single time we open a place, we'll just bring in more great people, and somebody will filter up. Yeah.
Awesome, buddy. Well, I appreciate you sitting down. I know that you've got a busy schedule. And when's your seminar today?
2:15. I'm really excited. I'm basically going to have the exact same talks. It's really good prep. But yeah, it's all about better bar managing.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. I've got a lot more podcasts to do today.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks, buddy.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoy sitting down with friends and people who I haven't met before, or mentors, or people I idolize, and fanboy out a little bit. I really hope you enjoy the episodes and everything you get from them, because I'm just going to keep loving doing them, and they're just going to keep happening. But I recently started working with Beyond Footwear out of Toronto. Beyond Footwear is, if you've looked at my Instagram or my social media, my fantastic shoes that I wear around. My pink flamingos get a lot of attention, but I've started working with them as their brand ambassador. So if you go to beyondfootwear.com, so BIION footwear.com, and order a pair of shoes and type in my name, and hopefully if you're listening to this podcast you know how to spell my name, you'll get 20% off a pair of shoes. I really enjoy them. They're comfy as hell. I travel in them, I work in them, I do absolutely everything in them, and I really enjoy working with these guys. It's an amazing company out of Toronto, and I'm thankful that I have been given the opportunity to be a brand ambassador. So I want to thank everybody for the support for the podcast. I want to thank everybody for following along on social media, and if you want a cool gangster pair of shoes, you've got to have a pair of Beyonds. See you guys. Bye.